My name is Fiona Douglas, and I head up the Dialect and Heritage Project. In this short presentation, I'm going to explain what the project is and how you can get involved. I'll also give you a flavour of some of the fantastic dialect, photographs, stories and sound recordings we have in our national collection that stretches right across England. I'll also explain how you can help us with your expert local history knowledge. Our story begins in 1946 with Harold Orton, Professor of English Language and Medieval Literature at the University of Leeds, who collaborated with Eugen Diet to devise the now world-famous Survey of English Dialects. The survey saw 9 intrepid fieldworkers travelling across England to 313 different locations, mainly rural villages. In each place, they interviewed 2 to 3 people and asked a total of 1,300 questions. The majority of this fieldwork was done in the 1950s. The work was continued later by the Institute of Dialect and Folklife Studies. And then the resources from the Institute and the survey were brought together to form the Leeds Archive of Vernacular Culture. In 2018, the Dialect and Heritage Project received funding to share the University of Leeds' unique dialect and cultural heritage archives with the nation, and so to continue the story. The Leeds Archive of Vernacular Culture is a large, varied, multimedia collection. There are many photographs, audio recordings, all of the results from the original Survey of English Dialect responses, some word pronunciation and grammar maps, and fieldworkers' notebooks, as well as lots of other interesting material. This map shows the 313 locations visited by the Survey of English Dialects. Was your local area one of those marked on the map? You can check out a detailed list of locations at the end of the presentation. The map also shows the present-day museum partners for the Dialect and Heritage Project, which is bringing this dialect and local history back home to local communities. These are the 9 survey fieldworkers. Those with asterisks against their names were homegrown talent, being current or previous students of the University of Leeds. You can trace the progress of the survey by looking at the dates and the locations. Most of the fieldworkers worked in particular parts of the country. The major exception was the most prolific of the fieldworkers, Stanley Ellis, who went to 118 localities and travelled all over the country collecting dialect. Stanley is pictured in the photograph on the left. Here he is interviewing Tom Mason. However, the photograph is not quite what it seems. Tom Mason wasn't one of the survey's informants at all. He just happened to be a friend of Stanley Ellis and to live in the right sort of house. This photograph was staged for publicity purposes. The fieldworkers used a variety of modes of transport to get about the country on their dialect pursuits. Some took the train, Donald, pictured, took the motorbike, and Stanley Ellis, who we've already met, even had his own dialect caravan. When they arrived at the village, one of the first things they did was write back to Harold Orton to explain that they had arrived safely, whether they had found somewhere to stay, and also whether they had found any likely participants. As you can see, Donald has just arrived in Newport on the same day as the sewage pipe, which he hopes is not an omen. These are some of the people interviewed by the survey. Jimmy Marsden, on the right, was well known locally for keeping ferrets. The survey was interested in dialect as a window on the past, and so the people interviewed were mainly older, at least 60 or 65 years old. Some were in their 90s. Preference was given to those who had lived in the same location for most of their lives, to men who were rather less inclined to correct their speech, and to those who were intelligent, good talkers, and had a good set of teeth. Why did their teeth matter? Well, If you have problems with your dentition, it's likely to have an effect on how you pronounce things. And of course, the survey was interested not only in different words, but also in how people pronounce them. The survey questionnaire asked all sorts of questions. Questions about everyday life, about occupations, about agriculture, and as you can see here, about things like baking and cooking. Baking, cooking and laundry questions tended to be asked of women rather than men, a product of its time perhaps. Those questions where you have a suggested answer with an asterisk immediately following are ones designed to elicit pronunciation answers. Those without are where the researchers are expecting to find different words for things. These are some examples of the fieldworkers' notebooks. These particular ones were done by Peter Wright in North Yorkshire, and as you can see, he gives some pictorial representations of the cow byre. On the far right are the answers to the questions we've just looked at in the survey. It's written in the International Phonetic Alphabet, or IPA, which has specific symbols to represent particular sounds. By the mid-1950s, the technology had developed enough for them to be able to go back on the road, revisiting some of the original villages and making audio recordings, although as you can see from the photograph, the equipment was large and somewhat cumbersome. They faced additional problems in that some of the houses they visited lacked an electricity supply, and so sometimes they had to hook the recorder up to the battery of the Land Rover and feed the leads through the kitchen window. Where possible, they interviewed the original informants, such as Charles Armstrong from Stokesley.
When I got started with a milk round, and I used to sell it wholesale at first, and then I got started with a retail round. Well, I used to be up at 4:30 every morning, that it would come, and I used to milk I had 13 cows to milk before I got my breakfast.
Hand milk?
Hand milk thing on, wasn't machine milking. And I used to have a little clock stuck on table, down at milk house. And I used to milk with that clock. And if I was 5 minutes late, I knew I had that 5 minutes to make up. Folks used to get up with me, when I used to come to Stoughton with milk.
Once all the survey results were in, they were collated, and a series of maps were devised. These ones show different words for making tea, the little bits of batter that you might get served with your fish and chips, and alternative words across different parts of the country for a snack. As you can see, there's quite a lot of variation, and some of these words are still in use today. When he set out, Harold Orton was really interested in being able to make a linguistic atlas. Unfortunately, he died before he could see it published. Fast forward to the present day, and the Dialect and Heritage Project is collecting present-day dialect, stories and memories from across the country. We're really interested in working with local history societies and gaining from them their expertise to help us find out more about the original survey informants, the villages, and how they have changed over the years. Please do get in touch if you would like to help us with your local expertise. You can explore our collections further and contribute to our dialect research online through our new website at dialectandheritage.org.uk. Or you can get involved in some of the dialected events and activities that are happening at our partner museums and out and about in the community. Or volunteer with us, become a dialect field worker, transcribe dialect recordings, help out at a museum or event, or be a project publicity advocate and spread the word. We very much hope to hear from you.